Nice to meet you all. Gaurav Rao. So first, thank you to Toloka to let me kind of jump in here towards the end. I am from industry, so most of my background has been data science, machine learning, and AI. Excuse me. I spent about 13 years at IBM. So most of that time was spending training, serving platforms, trusted AI. So there's been some conversations on how to build and establish guardrails. So we were one of the first to introduce a runtime platform that allows you to watch as your ML models are making predictions to ensure, right, that you're consistently making the right predictions once you're feeding it live data. So I had that opportunity to work on that. And you may have worked with AI Fairness 360. That was part of my team that open sourced that. After about 13 years at IBM, I spent 2.5 years at Neural Magic, which is a venture-backed startup here in Davis Square. And the thinking around Neural Magic was very similar to, I think, what a lot of people face here. Deep learning is hard. It's expensive. How do we alleviate the compute burden associated with training and deploying deep learning models? So the types of techniques we employed are some that I think even Somesh you had mentioned. How do we take advantage of sparsity? How do we take advantage of low bit precision neural networks? And how do we apply that now to computer vision, NLP, large language models, which have existed for several years? And then finally, I run the machine learning and AI business at AtScale. And AtScale is also a Boston-based company. And the challenge and the focus that we have with machine learning here is the dichotomy we see on business impact. So when you look at machine learning spend, I think 2023, you pick your favorite number, it's close to 500 billion in solution spend. But when you start to look at the impact and ROI for machine learning, roughly 1 out of every 2 machine learning models makes its way into production. And then of those, 36% are actually delivering on a business outcome. So what that's telling me is that there's hype and there's spend, but less and less large organizations are actually able to take advantage of the machine learning that they've employed. So how do we do something better and different that takes advantage of what the business and the business metadata has? And how do we collect and organize that and serve that in a meaningful way to AI or distributed AI platforms? And then I should say, finally, one of the cool things that we get to do is partner very closely with the university. So I actually have a student who's done 3 co-ops from Northeastern in our AI business at AtScale. And we're always looking for new students. We think it's a great opportunity to work more closely with you to get bleeding edge research and ideas, and then also give you an opportunity to work in industry solving large enterprise challenges from companies like Caterpillar, et cetera. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So as you mentioned, I think it'll be a great opportunity to connect with him, especially thinking about internship opportunities, future work opportunities. And so he seems very, very interested in having those connections with industry, with students. And so I think it'll be a great opportunity for connecting for those things. Also, it's great that he has co-op opportunities. So thank you so much for being here. So what we'll do is that I'm going to start with some questions towards our panelists. And also let's take as well questions from the audience so that we can start to network with each other and have the opportunity to start to meet each other. Would that dynamic work? And so what we'll aim to facilitate a lot of discussions and networking. Okay, so maybe we can start. So this was a lot around the future of work. Maybe you guys could share about, would it be, I think that on one hand, let's start to talk a little bit about the future of work, but I think that it'll be also really interesting to learn about their trajectories, about how they've gotten here. So let's start first with questions around the future of work. Also, if you guys want to ask questions as well, raise your hand and we'll start just having that dynamic. So how do you think that AI is going to impact the job market in the next decade? What is your vision for that?
I'll let you start.
Putting me on the spot, but Well, that's a very interesting question. Like, how is AI going to impact the job market? I think it's only going to help. Like every single time we had something coming with automation, with the new thing, like the entire industrial revolution, the four stages. We are at Industry 4.0 currently. When that was 1.0 with steam engines, people were like, hey, our jobs are going to be taken. No laborers anymore. How do we handle it? When electricity came in after that, it was the same discussion. 3.0, when automation, robotics, and manufacturing came in, again, the same thing. And now with IoT and everything, let's say, or like AI, everything that you want to put together into that bucket, it's just the same discussion all over again that AI is going to affect it. I have a suggestion. If you are more interested into this, there's a nice December 2017 paper in Science by Eric Rinzolfson, an amazing professor. I really appreciate it. And that paper is aptly titled Machine Learning and Workforce Implications. And it really says like, well, it's only going to improve productivity and not going to affect a whole lot of other things. So yeah, that's my take.
I would agree. I mean, I think, you want to, I was going to add to it. I would say, I think it's going to do two things. And one of my favorite quotes is, I don't think AI is going to replace people, but managers or employees who use AI will replace employees and managers who don't. And I think the point there is, look, it's a competitive differentiation. So especially when we look at industry, you're seeing an arms race of this industry, releases something, then their competitor releases something. And we see that back and forth dichotomy. So I think you're going to see more people skilled in AI. And then I think when it comes to jobs and hires and posting, you're going to see more in the skills section, more relevant libraries. You're going to see more relevant tools. Like as we hire data scientists, I'm not that surprised that now AutoML tools have made their way into, resumes, or familiarity with Hugging Face, or the ability to know what a pre-trained model is and have experience with that. Those are the kind of things that I think are going to impact that market. And then I think there was a really interesting question earlier in the talk on, I think it was a call center example, where are we going to replace people? And I think from a productivity standpoint, we're not. So, I would, if that gentleman was still here, my question back to him would have been, do you enjoy spending long times on a phone call? Do you enjoy having someone say, can I put you on hold? Can I transfer you to another department? Because call centers and contact center analytics, the KPIs that typically get measured are deflection rates. Was it resolved? Time to resolution. So while we may not just throw more people to answer that first line of defense and questions, what I would argue is you automate some of those early screens and then transition you to somebody who has more expertise to resolve the question that you want answered, right? So now I can upskill people to now have broader domain expertise to now actually help my business with something like deflection rates or time to resolution. So that type of mentality, I think, is going to be new in the hiring spree.
I love that phrase that you said, that the differentiator is going to be a lot and who's using it and who's not, and it is important, I think, also as we're designing tools to think about how we can empower the different sectors to appropriate it as is most useful for them. Thank you for that thought process. So we'll take some questions as well from the audience. Yes, and please state your name so that we can get to, and also where you're coming from, so that we can all get to know each other and build community. Yes.
So hello everyone, I'm Sarthak. I'm majoring in data science here in Khori College.
Excellent.
So my concern was the same regarding considering recently Geoffrey Hinton, known as the godfather of AI. He recently resigned from Google and his statement was like AI is dangerous for the job market, not considering the creativity, but the rule-based jobs would surely be replaced by AI, because AI can do that thing better than us for a rule-based particular aspect. So yeah, I was going to just quote that statement only. So yeah.
Would you guys like to share your thoughts about that?
I mean, I can start. I mean, I think AI, it's a hard question, it's a broad question, but rule-based systems as an example, not every AI is just going to go and replace that. Like, I think you had given an example of like RPA, and there's certain types of techniques where AI makes sense. And I think there's a very common misconception with generative AI and LLMs that it's going to go solve every single business problem, which is just not true, right? And there's always going to be certain techniques and certain approaches that are better fit for the workload that you're trying to run, right? So like generative AI, for example, is not going to go replace XGBoost for structured tabular data. And there's numerous reasons from a technical standpoint why that's the case. So when it comes back to impact of AI, I think there's still enough in core processes like finance, HR, supply chain, logistics that are still going to run off of machine learning and AI that has nothing to do with, you know, replacement and, you know, productivity boost that you would get from like a generative AI system.
So it's survival of the fittest.
I won't take it that far as survival of the fittest. I'll give you an example from my startup days. I started a company called Matsai AI, providing AI services to manufacturing industries. It was 2018. We went to a small steel company in Texas. And it was the time when GPT-2 was released, and I was freshly doing my PhD, and I was like, well, LLM for the win. And like pretty much that mindset as a college student where I'm like tech first approach, everything should be state of the art on the tech and things like that. I go to them, they ask me, so can you give us a back of the envelope calculation as to how much this will cost? And I do those calculations using AWS SageMaker, training times and everything. And I'm like, close to $500,000. Like, you're a startup, we are not going to pay you that much. And we don't have that budget. I'm like, but you're not going to get productivity out of like, or the accuracy. And then we entered into an entire business discussion. A business discussion that kind of involved like, what is their process? What exactly are they trying to solve? And ultimately, we came down to a system that kind of saved them $3 million every single year, took down the the extra workforce that they had been employing as like extra hours from their top managers and executives to do something. And the tech that we used was Regex and then XGBoost, running on a local CPU. No LLMs, no SageMaker, nothing. Old ThinkPad running this system in a very Flask-based system, like Python Flask interface, and just solving that problem straight away.
Sometimes it's about common sense.
Sometimes it's about business sense.
Right.
What is required in the business? Tech is not everything.
That's it. I was going to say it's that last mile, right? It's what have I done to improve some sort of business outcome or business KPI with the machine learning, right? Because that's what often that's that 1 in 2 every, model makes its way into production, because too often it's let me go figure out the best state-of-the-art accuracy that I can deliver. Let me go write a paper on one-shot learning and look what I can do with this computer vision network, which is great because it's advancing the state of research. But if that's not being used now to go solve some problem at Caterpillar for their business for some mission critical system, then who cares?
Yeah.
Right.
It's not making sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Would you like, and please state your name and
So
where you're from.
my name is Ujjwal. I'm a comp sci graduate student here at Northeastern, right? So this is largely a career based. I want to some kind of feedback from you guys, right? So from far in the discussion, I see you guys, doing mention of how scientists in different fields can use AI to, really accelerate their, research. But as a computer scientist, right? What the dilemma that I feel more often than not is, do I really specify my research area to something like Civic AI or social AI and just work on that, given the existing technology, or do I work on really developing the maths to really accelerate the technology, right? That in turn helps the other, research areas. So I mean, this could be like obviously preferential to what I want to do. Like, but what's like your take on this? Like, do you think there's gonna come a point where the AI intern is gonna develop maths for it to be larger, right? And so, what do you recommend based on your experience so far? Do I focus myself on something like AI in bioinformatics and I want to delve into that, or do I restrict myself to just developing AI and then you can intern use it for other sciences?
Do what you love.
I'll retire and go back to your farm.
I
You wanna
can
take that?
start. Yeah, I can start. I mean, my advice would be to get the most foundation level experience you can. And then if you find that, as she was saying, if there's something that you're super passionate about, then go for that particular industry. But personally, I've spent most of my career in building tools and platforms. So I don't consider myself an industry expert in finance or materials or science. But what it's given me the opportunity to do is understand the capabilities at a foundational level so that I can say, okay, if I go talk to Bank of America, or if I go talk to Caterpillar, I know how to apply that, right, to that domain specific problem. I may not be the domain specific expert, and that's okay.
I would also argue that it depends on that's a great response, by the way. But I would also argue that it depends a lot on your end goals. So for example, maybe one of your goals is I want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
so you could join, for example, maybe an industry position that's going to pay you a lot of money, but they're going to tell you exactly what you need to build. And you might not be able to innovate in terms of defining, for example, new interface, et cetera, but rather they're just going to tell you, we need you to build this. And maybe that's fine because your end goal is I want to make a lot of money. And so I think that it's important to sit down and define what are your goals that you have, and they can be very personal goals. So there's nothing wrong with saying like I want to make a lot of money, or I want to change the world with my vision. And so it's just different goals. And so it's important to sit down and you define what are your end goals, and then identify what type of work can lead you towards that. I don't know if you want to add also something.
No, it's very much a personal preference. Whether you want to, let's say, in the perspective of machine learning, whether you want to write layers that like how does a specific conv 1D work with all sorts of filters and kernels and everything, or you want to use it for a computer vision task. And if you want to use it, do you want to train general models and like work, let's say, in the space of OpenAI, trying to develop these models, or you want to work in a domain specific biotech startup, let's say, to image cells and do it. It's totally up to you. Maybe use your co-ops to figure out what
Right.
inspires you the most.
Do we have other questions? Harika, did you want to ask?
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask, but I think the career related thing was similar.
And please introduce yourself for others that might not know you.
Sure. I'm Harika. I just graduated from Puri College of Computer Science. And yeah, so
She's fantastic. She was in my global AI class.
so I basically took human-centered AI-related course under Professor Savage, and that's how I got little knowledge of AI-related things. So I just read an article on Bloomberg that IBM is basically causing 7,800 jobs because AI can, do those jobs. So I was just thinking, like, based on everything that we heard in the talk, AI can't do everything by itself. Then how is it that IBM is taking such a big decision of just pausing them?
You want to talk about your previous employer?
Yeah. I think yes. I think part of it also is those kind of decisions I know are not easy when they have to do that level of scrutiny.
Mhm.
But I also think some of those are types of jobs, they often get rehired in some scenarios. So that's one. And then two, I don't know how much of it would be blown out of proportion to say it's purely AI is causing, these people to, now be let go. So I think you have to take kind of what you read a little bit with a grain of salt, but it's a fair question. that's probably the extent probably that I could talk to about it, but you know, if you want to learn more, I can talk after.
Excellent, great question. Do we have other,
Marina.
oh, yes. And please introduce yourself also for others who are getting to know each other.
So I have kind of continuation of one general question. Sorry. So I completely agree with everything you said, and in fact, my favorite example on January 1st, 1900, front page of Boston Globe said the biggest problem of the 20th century. Guess what it is?
Electricity back then,
Of course.
maybe
I was gonna say
electricity.
1900.
1900.
January 1st, front page of Boston Globe. Biggest problem was the 20th century. Force number.
Ah,
So, from all the
Right.
examples that you were talking about, to me, that's the most vivid one. Obviously, it was not an issue, as we know in the last century. However, I do have a cognitive dissonance when, and you know, I'm certainly aware of the Chinese plants that were completely converted to automation and were not able to function without 2 or 3 or 4 people per shift, which is nothing compared to thousands of thousands. And so I was hoping that you can help me resolve my cognitive dissonance when I hear that there are 1 million truck drivers in the United States. And we already have a successful highway from, I think, from Mexico to somewhere in the west of Arizona, New Mexico to Arizona. The trucks, the humanless trucks are driving from stop area to stop area, which is like 90% of the driving, because obviously it takes a lot one way and distracted to on highways and so forth and so on. And that's just in truck driving, 1 million people. That sounds like a large number to me. And even though I completely agree with every word you said, which is what I'm saying, I have a problem with this. The people who are the truck drivers are not like, yes, GPT-4 is writing decent code, but it's not a production level code. And if you're not a programmer, you're generally not able to specify it well enough to even get there. The only reason you can get there is because you know exactly what you need, exactly how to specify it to a machine, because you've been working as a programmer in zeros and one mind frame. And so I will, my thought is that the people for whom in the 90s we implemented pictures for a McDonald's menu because they were so illiterate that they couldn't read the names, are not going to be able to be part of the workforce that is assisted in any serious way by some kind of a large language model. So forth.
I'll
I
let
will-
you take that one.
Yeah, I think we need to highlight Professor Saiph's work there. Like she has been working with rural workers in West Virginia, training them to be a part of this new AI workforce. I think efforts like that are coming up again and again and over to help people get acclimatized to this new paradigm where people can be more efficient, more productive as this tech starts getting adapted. Like there was a huge commotion in 1960s when ATM machines were installed. It was about, well, bank tellers won't have a job anymore. Banks, as like physical banks, still exist, and ATM machines still do as well. So they just started doing work that was higher priority and required more human intervention. I think that's going to keep on continuing as we move ahead.
Well, also, one important aspect to discuss is around the de-skilling. So, for example, with the truck drivers, a big issue is that truck drivers, maybe they're super equipped to be able to manage everything, but with a lot of the automation, they start to lose, while they're on the job, they start to lose a lot of the skills. And so that could also start to happen with the programmers. For example, programmers, maybe they get the job, they're super skilled, then the automation might make them start to lose, that's going to start to de-skill them. And so that I think is also something that we need to start to think about. And also, why can it be dangerous to have the de-skilling? For example, with with the airplane pilots. A big issue is that airplane pilots also get de-skilled directly on the job. But then when there's emergencies, they can't, and they need to turn off the automation. A lot of the times it becomes very dangerous because they can't, they got de-skilled. And so now that they can't take control of the planes. And so that I think is an important area to consider. And actually, I know, for example, Maya and Mitanshi have been, and also Kimberly and Kashif have been working a lot on interfaces for the workers and thinking about how to skill them. As was mentioned, I don't know actually if you guys want to share anything about your research that you have been working on. Mitanshi is working on AI for workers. I don't know, Mitanshi, if you want to share.
Past businesses under Texas that I'm actually graduate student at 21. Yeah, I'm Mitanshi and I'm working on the process side for like 2 semesters. So I'm a graduate student here at Pori College and I'm studying data science. So what we have been working on is building mostly AI tools, recommender systems to enhance the navigation process of these Toloka workers to make it more easier for them. And back to that, we have also been collaborating with the CNU patients to basically find out spam tasks and kind of handle that rigorous factor of working on a task and figure out which kind of task would be better to be suggested to these workers, and also introducing new tasks basically so that they can help them grow their skill set as well. So yeah, this is what we're working on.
Excellent. And so, for example, we also had before, as we had the introductions, there were some people that were mentioning about how they were working with productivity. I don't know, in thinking about, for example, large language models and productivity. I don't know if you want to share a little bit about your perspectives on this topic.
So a friend of mine works at GitHub, which implement. So a friend of mine works at GitHub, which is a company that provides you with version control system for software. GitHub owned by Microsoft. Microsoft has a deal with OpenAI. They brought something called Copilot. For people who do programming, you've heard of. The initial analysis indicates that Copilot is making people about 50% more efficient. So it's basically doubling your workforce without having to hire, a bunch of people. So I think this is what was so attractive to this topic is how does AI contribute to helping you in the workforce? I think saying that AI is not going to replace human activity. It's going to replace a bunch of human activity. I think we need to be cognizant of this. But we need to figure out, today in the US, a bunch of people here are in tech, so they've seen a lot of layoffs. So they think, because you're just thinking about technology, you think, oh my God, there are no jobs. But in the US, we actually have the best job market ever. We don't have enough workers today to do all the jobs, and AI is going to come and help us augment the workforce with capabilities. So for the people that are no longer being employed by IBM to do some menial tasks, it's not like the only thing they did was menial tasks, but as a collective, the number of hours people spend on these menial tasks, maybe writing release notes of a software. You don't need this. An AI can build it and can do a better job. So it's all about identifying places where AI can augment your capabilities, and then you do whatever you want with that time that you regain. You do more work, you read a book, whatever. That's up to you. But I think that's kind of how I think of how AI is coming into the workforce.
Yeah, I love the perspective about thinking of how can we create AI that can augment the workforce. Actually, Kashif, I don't know if you want to share. So Kashif is my PhD student. He's been working a lot on thinking, for example, even about how we can use large language models for helping to enhance workers and their productivity.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Kashif, and I'm advised by Saiph here. and I'm a PhD student, and we work on large language model and future of work. So in one of our projects, we are trying to fine tune a language model in context of gig workers, which are like a lower hierarchy knowledge gig worker. So we have like different types of information workers, like managers, and then there are gig workers, which are at the lower level of the hierarchy. So there we are trying to, in one of our study, what we are doing, we are providing these, first thing is that we are using participatory design to fine tune language models. And we are also providing training to these workers, how to use language models, how they can use these tools. And in another group, we are just like not providing them the training, and we are trying to see the context that how, like, if we are giving training to these workers, how these technologies can be, used to increase their productivity, can have increased income and have a very positive impact in their lives, and their workforce. So that is what I'm working. And I love your thought about, that even, and something that you also mentioned, both of you mentioned that, when people think of generative AI and everybody just takes GPT and say this, can we generalize GPT for this thing, that thing, and everything, But here comes the argument where we are seeing this context of, why not we should have Bloomberg GPT? Why not we should have a gig GPT? Should there be, I think recently Microsoft has been investing a lot in, how, to counter medical misinformation, how we can, fine tune or have those things in the GPT language models so that it can be made. There is the whole noise around, GPT has been that, okay, this is going to replace that. But a lot of thing is that people are not even looking at the other side where there are shortcomings, and that can be implemented, if we figure that out.
Great points. Great points. Thank you. Do you want to also participate? And thank you so much for this great discussion. Yes, and please introduce yourself.
Sure. I am Priyanka. I was a graduate student from Northeastern back in 2012. I've been working with Civic for the past 10 years, and recently I took a break, but I'm just trying to get back and learn about the latest things. So, just few things I want to mention, because everybody was discussing about the impact of automation, impact of AI, about it's on the job market and all this. So definitely, this is my observation. Definitely, when there is something that is done routinely, those tasks are, I'm seeing that they are not going on. So, just for example, simple example, like if I go to Whole Foods recently, they have introduced this dash cart. Back in the day, you had a self-checkout. Now you've got a cart, which is totally automated, where you just put in the fruits. It's already connected to the Amazon account. And so there are jobs, definitely. There are impacts on jobs which are very routine. But as everybody was mentioning, you have to upskill or find areas where, you can get in. But definitely, whatever is routine, even in action, I would say, once you create an automation for certain type of task, whoever was working in delivery was not happy. What am I going to do? Then you need to think something more, right? So that's where I think students or anybody should think about. Definitely have to be at a different level rather than doing the same thing. That's my
Yeah, that's true. And I think that here it would be great to connect and unite forces in thinking about this problem and how we can start to address it, because as you mentioned, it's very important that we start to think about it. Yes, but please introduce yourself.
My name is Toloka. I was a graduate student in this Northeastern, and before that, I'm still working in the technology. So for now, I just do some general AI startup and do some solutions project. So I have a.
So right now you have your own startup on generative AI?
I just started the POC or the MVP demo and stuff like that.
Oh, excellent. And I think we have a lot of people that are working in venture capital, so it'll be interesting to connect.
So that's the thing. But the reality is that so based on the lecture, we learn something about how to synthetic domain data, right? And just this person say use a fine tuning to do some job, but I'm just curious about this because fine tuning will cost, the leverage is high, right? So everybody wanted to use a Bloomberg, GPT, but we do not need to care about how to go to market because I mean, TikTok, I'm a product expert. So for that, I need to care about everybody want to use that, right? That's the we need to care about how to go to market, right? Application there. How many people want to buy that or just to pay money for that? Otherwise, your ROI is most high. Why do that, right? So I just have a question about this first idea. How did you find tuning that? What is the cost and there's some like evaluation?
So currently we are like exploring the Hugging Face and like different,
Source.
open source language models. And particularly we are trying to first seeing the like prompting that, and then we are at the stage where we are like trying to look at, but we are using Hugging Face open source models. And we are in the process of that, like.
So which model is that?
So currently, we are, that's like still like, we are working on that research and so it's like.
And we work a lot with respect to interfaces.
Yeah.
So what we're interested is in terms of, okay, how do we enable non-experts, for example, to be able to understand the output of these large language models, especially given that they have certain errors in their output. And so how do we help these non-experts, which are the workers, to appropriate it for the different tasks that they might have? And I think also, I don't know if you would like to share some insights, because I know that you were also working around like venture capital and because like I'm just trying to so that we can all network and we can get to know each other.
Sure. My name is Kevin Mulcahy. Actually, a good colleague there. I have a book out called The Future Workplace Experience. And it's for the human resource audience. And human resources are petrified about this technology. One, for themselves, because human resources is one of the most paper-intensive functions in a company and has the most opportunity for automation. And I think to paraphrase what one of the panelists said, they use the concept of it's not that AI replaces HR, it's HR people who know AI will displace all the other people.
Yes.
But secondly, what HR talks about is the skill shortage and the labor shortage. So I think there's a lot of worry about, will certain categories of people not be able to get jobs? The cash register enables so many people who had not basic mathematics to get jobs operating a cash register, right? Because the model before that was the manager had experienced a lot of shrinkage. In fact, because people were giving out the wrong change or taking the money or something. So these technologies don't solve you have to actually ask the practitioners what problem is being solved here. And over and over again, one of the largest applications of AI in the corporate workplace is in this idea of just-in-time learning. I no longer have to hire people who already know what to do something. If I can use AI to deliver what they need to know, when they need to know it, I can broaden the number of people I can hire. So I want people to think about an expansive interpretation of AI versus a bogeyman of AI, right? It's going to take things from us. No, it provides tremendous opportunity to labor forces for roles that people are now, who were formerly not able to do these roles, are now empowered to do these roles. And if we think about like what Microsoft Windows is being particularly good at is making it adaptive to people with various challenges, right? It's now, you can voice interact with it. You can, there's a lot of interactions that you can do with the technology that aren't just on the keyboard. And I want us to think about all the potential ways to interact or that it opens up to give people more ways to empower them as employees. And any time for any of you that are solving problems, the number one problem for every company, the number one problem is return on investment on their workforce. And if any of your applications can just pay attention to how do I make my workforce or employees more productive? It's yes, some companies will hire fewer people, but it also empowers them. Companies need to grow. And it will empower them to think about, now I can hire more people to do more things. Amazon has 1 million employees. And it has more robots doing the job of humans than any other company in the world. And it cannot hire enough employees. So I'm just showing, because it now needs people to do different things than the robot. So this is not, I'm a little older than some of you. I do remember that I've seen documentaries about the cash register coming in, because beforehand people were handing people groceries. I also remember just every wave of technology we had used the bank teller, the ATM machine. There are still exactly the same number of bank tellers in the US today as there were when the ATM was introduced. Yes, it shifted a lot more jobs. It didn't create any more bank teller jobs. Those jobs stopped. Mailmen or mail people. The US is desperately short of mailmen, despite automating and postal codes and every technology and the decline of mail because of email, and they still cannot get the mail out. They still do not have enough people. The truck drivers, there actually is 500,000 truck driver shortage in the US.
Well,
The technology, it's not that it's going to displace truck drivers. There's a shortage of truck drivers. Welders, there's another 500,000 shortage of welders. Now we have people doing remote welding, and we're training how to weld using virtual reality to train them how to weld. It could be to train welders using the raw material. I could talk for an hour, so I won't. But I want us to, the bottom line is see how AI augments humans and workers, and think about the new jobs that get created because of these technologies that you're all working on. Even prompt engineering. And I will admit this, just in a closed room, I was down in Florida 2 days ago, visiting my in-laws, and Fox News was on. Okay, I'm not normally a Fox News, and they were talking about ChatGPT. And what they did to demonstrate it to the audience is they put in the same types of questions that you'd ask Google. They put in one sentence queries into ChatGPT to show everybody how smart ChatGPT was. Like, stop using it as a fancy search engine. That's not what it is. And so we now, but I then took one of my elderly relatives and showed her how she could use it. And she was looking up some benefits, and she said, well, explain this, explain that. And she was astounded at the custom information she got. And she was able to put in, I am 80 you are a medical advisor. I am an 80-year-old with the following conditions. I am experiencing the following symptoms. What other drugs would you recommend that I should try? And it was spitting out a bunch of drugs, and she was going, yes, taking it. Oh, that's interesting. I'll ask my doctor. So it's become the new, what was it, the MD, with the doctor were like, what was it? WebMD. So she's I'm sorry, Florida, I've empowering people to ask GPT about medical issues, and I don't know if it's smart enough to answer all those questions, but with the right training, the training that all of us need to have now, I'll finish here, is training questions and queries. If you want, all of these systems are driven by the query. And the garbage in, garbage out, the badly framed query, if I don't know enough to ask the right question, every answer is going to be a good one. And we're seeing ChatGPT, 90% brilliance, 10% fiction, and we just don't know what is the 90% and what is the 10%. And it's the precision of your query, the depth of your query, the power of your query. It's the power of this Socrates method. We have to be better question askers. And if we can do that, and let the power of the machine fit in our gaps, there's tremendous opportunity there. So if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I speak to a lot of HR people about the future of work, about AI, and they all say it cannot come fast enough to help us with what our work was. And with our helping our employees learn, helping us get new employees, expanding our ability to recruit, getting more out of our employees. And one of the big dilemmas is there are employees using ChatGPT in the office, and they're not all saying they are. And this is what HR is talking about. We don't know if our employees are using ChatGPT. And the dilemma is, should they be telling us? Or if they're doing their job in half the time, well, are we paying them to do a job, or are we paying them for their time? And if they're not telling us, and they don't show it to have somebody check and they think it's the right answer, and are we creating a liability because they think they know, or they're just going to make mistakes faster? So there's huge issues even with HR and HR policies and declaring if you're using ChatGPT in your job, and having the conversation with some of you who are new, more recent employees, some of you who will be employees, having a conversation about what is the right way to use it and making sure that another human sees your output, so that you can make sure that you're not just super fueling your blind spots. I mean, I'll leave it there because you give an Irish person a microphone. Good luck at it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that. You mentioned you had a book. I don't know if you want to mention it for others who want to maybe read about that book.
It's called The Future Workplace Experience.
The Future Workplace Experience.
Summary of it. Nobody needs to buy it. That's okay. And because it's for the HR audience, and you can distribute the executive summary. But the Future Workplace Experience.
The Future Workplace Experience. Excellent, excellent. So maybe now we can, if it's okay, we'll now start opening up for networking. So we'll each, for example, it was mentioned that some people they're very interested in providing now internship opportunities. And so feel free to connect as well, like with everyone. We have a lot of industry actors who are here. And so I think it'll be really nice now to use this time for networking with each other. And let's all give a round of applause and thank you to Toloka, who helped us to organize this event. Thank you very much, Alina, for this great organization. And let's thank our speakers as well. Thank you.